people already with us, so let's get going. I am Dr. Jennifer Spencer. I am a pelvic health therapist in Birmingham, Alabama. Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about
Yes, I'm
yourself?
Dr. Amanda Thompson, and I am actually located in Bridgeport, Texas, which is near DFW, about an hour northwest of the DFW area. So we are in completely different areas of the country, and I'm super excited that we are doing this.
Yes, but some of y'all may be wondering how we know each other, how we are connected, and that is through PelviBiz and Kelly Alhui. She has Kelly, Amanda and I are in the same cohort together under Kelly, so we've gotten to know each other well and thought that this talk on pediatric pelvic floor would be very beneficial for some of y'all to find ways to help your kiddos. But I have specifically had several moms recently ask me ways to help their kids, so that's what sparked this chat. So let's first talk, Amanda. Let's talk about the age that kids should start potty training. What are your thoughts on
So
that?
typically, I like my kiddos to be either boys or girls to be start the potty training around 3. Before 3 is super really just hard to do because the kids just don't understand the concept. If your kids are potty trained before 3, more power to you. Good job. But 3 is kind of where we start from there. They should be fully daytime pee trained about within 6 months of starting an actual training program. And then daytime training, most kids are trained daytime before kindergarten, but it's definitely a thing that's required for most pre-Ks. So before they're between 3 and 4, they're required to be potty trained for daycares or pre-Ks. Nighttime training is considered not having any sort of bedwetting or any accidents at night, and that is typically common 1 year post day training. So just because they're day trained doesn't mean that they're night trained.
So, Amanda, when would you say that is delayed nighttime training? I've had a lot of moms ask me or say that they're 5, 6, 7,
Mhm.
10-year-olds even still wear pull-ups at night. So at what age would you say that you may need to consult with a pelvic floor specialist about your child's nighttime
Anything
incontinence?
over the age of around 5. So 5 is kind of the cutoff where they should be not having pull-ups at night. There are a few special circumstances, kids with special needs and some other things, but generally kindergarten is your kind of your age timeline to be nighttime trained.
Okay. So, what would you say maybe some factors that are limiting a child from being able to be potty trained at night, or from something that's limiting the child from coming out of pull-ups
The
at
most
night?
common reason that kids are having bedwetting is constipation. My parents will tell me that they're not constipated, that they're having regular bowel movements, but most of the time, regular bowel movements are not actually regular bowel movements. So constipation is the #1 reason they are still wetting the bed, as well as dehydration and bladder irritants before bed. So we can kind of touch on some of those things too.
Okay. So you and I both know that dehydration in general is just a big
Mhm,
cause for constipation. And for adults, we all should be aiming for about half our body weights in fluid ounces of water.
mhm,
And that's
mhm.
the same for kids. They need about half their body weight in mostly water. Very few to no bladder irritants. But actually, dairy is a bladder irritant. They do need their dairy, but maybe make sure that they're not drinking dairy close to bedtime or
Mhm.
anything 2 hours before bedtime. Restricting fluids close to bedtime can be
Yeah.
significant in decreasing that. Any other
So
thoughts on that?
usually I tell my parents to get the dairy, any sort of milk in the morning, especially these older kids, getting some sort of dairy in their morning or their lunchtime, and then limiting their bladder irritants throughout the day. So one thing that I learned going through some of the coursework that we do, one of the juices that is not supposed to be a bladder irritant is apple juice. But for a lot of my kids that drink apple juice or even Gatorade at night before bed or with dinner, they are actually wetting the bed. And I actually think it's the sugar content in those juices, not the actual apple juice itself. So I just tell people to try to stick with water after 3 o'clock as best they can. Um, and then just trying to make sure they get half their body weight in ounces of fluid throughout the day, and then making sure they try to go to the bathroom before bed. But constipation and bladder irritants are a huge component.
Mhm. Mhm. And I know my kids, they're at separate schools, but both schools allow them to
Mhm.
bring a water bottle to school. And I don't that being the case when I was in school. So if your child's school doesn't allow them to bring a water bottle, maybe ask if they can, and that can help your child get a proper amount of water during the day instead of chugging it when they get home in the afternoon, but more sipping it throughout the day. Um, so how often should a child be pooping,
So it's
Amanda?
the same as adults. So they should, after the age of around 5, they should be having 2 bowel movements a day, at least one in the morning and one in the evening. Soft and long like a banana. That's key because if they're straining or having any sort of like rabbit poops, I always like to bring my coffee mug into this scenario. So we want soft and long like a banana. Please tell me you have something similar. Woohoo! Michelle Lyons posted a picture
Yes.
of, yes. So if they're having like
Yeah.
rabbit
Well,
poops,
I've
not so good. Soft and long, type 4 is the goal. And soft and long
mhm.
twice a day. I'll tell you, school-age children are the hardest because they have to be able to get up early enough in the morning to get something to stimulate their bowels, i.e. breakfast or some sort of hot liquid or something to move, walk a little bit, and the idea is that they poop before they go to school. The reason is most kids have a fear of going to the bathroom at school, especially bowel movements. Elementary kids, not as much as like later elementary, like third, fourth grade and older. They have a higher anxiety about having a bowel movement in public. And so I work on different strategies depending on the age of the child and the parents. Most of the time, the schools are actually really good about working with the parents. And then if you are working with the provider, whether it's in person or virtually, most of the time the schools are actually interested in learning. Sometimes they have kids themselves, or it's a group problem, not just one child. And so giving them this information can be really beneficial for the whole group. But having a bowel movement prior to going to school, so that's the goal number 1. And then like clockwork, they get home, they do their homework, they have a snack, and hopefully they're pooping in the evening time as well. Again, long and soft like a banana. Easy to pass, no straining.
Okay. So if our kids are not pooping twice a day, or pooping more pebbles, what can we do to help them? How can we decrease constipation? You and I both know fiber is huge. We females, we need about 25 grams. How many grams of fiber should, say, a 5-year-old
So
need during the
so
day?
I try really hard to not make it as much of a difficult task for the parents because now we're responsible for not only making sure they get enough fluid throughout the day, but getting enough fiber and protein and all the things. So the 3 takeaways for all of my parents, for my kiddos that I do treat, or even for adults, is for each meal to have a carb, a fat, and a protein. And if they're getting that, then they should be getting some sort of higher fiber at least one meal a day, preferably breakfast. So oatmeal. The milligrams and the grams for sugar content and fiber are hard to keep track of. I'll tell you the hardest part, when I do a voiding diary or food log, most of the kids are eating something really easy and quick for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because we're always on the go. The kids wake up late. We're just trying to get out the door. So instead of trying to add a whole lot of things, the multivitamins are going to be our key to getting all of our fruits and vegetables. Now that seems almost impossible. A lot of our kids are not eating enough fruits and vegetables throughout the day. So I have my favorite group of fruits and vegetables gummies that I usually will recommend, not required, just recommended. Most multivitamins that I buy at the store, I've tried everything. And most multivitamins have a ton of sugar in them. So Juice Plus, I don't know if you've heard of it, but a lot of my kids and even my adults, I like the Juice Plus brand because they have chewables. I have pill fatigue, my husband has pill fatigue, and so with the vegetables in it, you're getting your kale, your broccoli, you're getting all of the like deep greens in the veggie component, which boom, gets you all the fiber that you need for the day in theory. And so in theory is because everything in my world revolves around theory, right? So it's not textbook. But getting a higher fiber, some sort of grain or breadish something, but a carb, a fat, and a protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then making sure they're getting fruits and vegetables. A lot of the younger elementary kids, all my parents say is all they eat is cheese, macaroni and cheese, or hot dogs, or cheese sticks. So they're eating a lot of dairy, which is fine, but they're getting constipated because they're eating too much dairy, not enough other things. And so by doing some of the gummies, that Juice Plus gummies, which I'll give you the link to just research it. There's tons of videos on there. And then they're getting their fruits and vegetables. So by adding that, will make a huge impact on their constipation. Another big thing is probiotics. So everybody wants to add just anything that you can find. There's a few key indicators for probiotics. I tell my parents if their kids like yogurt, I call them monkey yogurts, but they're, I think, the Dannon brand of the yogurts, trying to get one in a day for that. Just regular yogurt off the shelf. Mix some granola and some fruit if your kids will do that. Some kids hate yogurt, or they have a sensitivity to any sort of dairy. And so there are some vitamins that you can do. The Ollie brand is okay. It has a lot of sugar in it, but it does have a kid's probiotic and prebiotic in there. All vitamins, if you take a multivitamin, need to be taken at night before our rest and digest time overnight. Most of my parents are giving multivitamins in the morning with breakfast, and then they just pee it out. So constipation will be aided with increasing fluid intake and making sure that their fruits and vegetables are being handled throughout the day. The Juice Plus is an easy one because they're chewables. My kids think that they are fruit snacks, so we are in good shape. And getting a carb, fat, and protein for each meal. That's a good takeaway.
Now I'll tell you, so my son will eat like 5 of these at a time. I eat them myself. I'm about to eat 3 for part of my lunch, but I have a lot of, I tell this to a lot of my moms, and they're like, oh, but it's got so much sugar.
Yeah.
It's natural sugar, which is good. It doesn't have any added sugars, and this specific brand has 3 grams of fiber per pouch. All the other pouches I've looked at maybe only have 1, maybe 2, but this brand has the highest fiber content. So my son's eating 5 of these. He's getting a good amount
and
of
those
fiber in
are
his
so easy to pack.
I'm a big,
Packing lunches,
yes.
my son still gets an afternoon snack, so putting it in his lunch bag, or packing it in your after school lunch bag for the after school snack. They're easy to open for the kids and they're super easy to access. That brand you can buy it at Walmart, Target, Amazon. You can pretty much find it anywhere. So I love that brand for sure.
Mhm. So what are some other ways that we can help decrease constipation in our kids? Like squatty potty. You and I advocate for squatty potty all the time for people of all ages. So talk a little bit about toilet positioning
Yes. Ooh, I love
with the
this. I
kids.
love this. And I might demonstrate. So both of us probably on our YouTube channels, for sure on Instagram. I have tons of bowel health posts back when posts were a thing. But positioning for bowel movements are the same for adults and kids. And I'm going to demonstrate it in a minute. But the biggest thing is a lot of the toilet, all the toilets are too tall for kids. So when their legs are dangling, they can't actually relax their pelvic floor in order to have a bowel movement. So 2 takeaways. You want your knees above your hips. We're going to demonstrate because that's just fun. Hopefully I can get this to.
I think I got a step stool in here.
Do you have a squatty potty in your office?
It's in the bathroom, and I've got a.
So we're going to try that. I don't know if I can drop my phone. But we're going to try to do this. Propped up. Propped up. So you want knees above hips. Knees above hips. Feet flat.
Feet
So the
flat.
squatty potty brings it up. And on Amazon, which I'll try to find the one, on Amazon there's a 2-step. It's called 2-step squatty potty. And it has a little lip that you can take off for the older kids. My oldest takes the lip off. And then my youngest still needs it because she can't reach. But knees above hips, leaning forward, and then blowing out. That's the key. As both of us teach every day, you want to blow out. Increase pressure in the belly. If these kids are holding their breath with bowel movements, they're doing nothing but contracting their pelvic floor. I find it entertaining because I've taught my kids how to poop correctly for their entire lives. So they will breathe. They'll like hang themselves over off the toilet and basically almost fall off the toilet. It's kind of entertaining. But breathing out is key. If they're holding their breath, they're just really contracting their pelvic floor. Both of us, I know, have a bowel massage on our Instagrams. Bowel massage, the little ones, like babies that are constipated, I tell the parents to do the bowel massage every time you do a diaper change. But these kiddos that are elementary age all the way up, even adults, try early on, try to do it in the morning and the evening. But and then trying to get gas to release pretty regularly is going to be really beneficial. So positioning for bowel movements at school is hard, just because depending on the school, and the pre-Ks is usually shorter, but they don't always have a step stool to get to the toilet, so it's harder for them to relax.
Mm-hmm. But yes, bowel massage. You just mentioned. My kids occasionally, yes, they're constipated, and they come to me and say, "Mom,
Yes.
rub my belly," because it works. Usually, not even an hour later, it'll help to stimulate a bowel movement. And just to quickly show you, just here on my belly, I teach going up on the right, across at the top under the rib cage, and then down on the left hand side. And I usually teach more of a circular type pattern, slow, kind of moderately deep circles, and that up on the right, across at the top, and then down on the left. And then I usually will spend a little bit more time on that left side. That left side is where the descending colon is, and where poop usually tends to congregate more. But yes, that is highly beneficial to help with regulation, but also stimulation of bowel movements.
Another thing is, like, for adults, we teach a lot of like bowel stimulants, so like hot liquids, coffee, caffeine. But these kids aren't drinking coffee and hot beverages and stuff like that. So something warm and solid in the morning for breakfast, like oatmeal, will be beneficial. But vitamin C is a big one. So if you just eat a chewable vitamin C in the morning and at night, that will help stimulate bowels as well. Bowel massage, breathing with the having bowel movement, positioning for bowel movement, that fluid, all of that will be super, super beneficial.
And then let's also not forget just
100%.
activity, letting the kids run, play, and jump. Any kind of twisting motion oftentimes is great at stimulating the bowels. I did have one mom ask me specifically for advice for her elementary aged child who was daytime and nighttime potty trained, but then all of a sudden kind of reverted back and is wetting the bed at night. So, what advice would you have for this mom or for kids that?
So a lot of times it depends on the age. So if they're 5, 8, 10, there's going to be different factors. So if this is truly a new onset, like we just got back from Christmas break, we're back into school mode. Sometimes it is so each person's a little bit different, but sometimes it is same thing we just talked about, a constipation issue. It can be, especially like 8 to 10. I feel like 8 to 10 or even 9 and 10, that third, fourth, fifth grade, they start having a lot more requirements at school. There's an anxiety component that comes with the test taking and the stress. They also become very aware of their peers knowing what's going on in their like personal life. If they, whenever they're younger, they pass gas and they think it's funny, but especially girls, when they get older, they're just like, they're terrified. Having bowel movements at school, having a good morning routine before they go to school. But it all comes back to bowel health. But it also can be that they are not voiding enough throughout the day. So ask them, how many times did you ask your teacher to go potty at school? And they're like, oh, I didn't go, or I only went one time at lunch, or sometimes they're scared to get in trouble at school. Sometimes they don't drink enough, so they are not peeing all day long. And what happens is they're desensitizing their nerves and their bladder throughout the day. Then they're peeing, and they're not completely emptying their bladder overnight, and their bladder is still thinking it needs to produce urine. So anxiety for not peeing or not pooping and not peeing enough throughout the day. Increased stress will pull that pelvic floor up, so really good diaphragmatic breathing will be helpful. But depending on the age too, if it's a social anxiety situation to where they're becoming more aware of what's going on. But the bedwetting is truly 8 years old and older. It is life altering. Those kids don't participate in sleepovers. They are embarrassed to go to other friends' houses. Sometimes it ends up turning into daytime leaking, jumping on the trampoline, and they don't want to participate with their peers. So it's super impactful to address it as quickly as possible. A sudden onset, I would say let's look back at the last week or two and see if there's been dietary changes, lifestyle changes, they moved to a different location. But then school's starting. So like right now, school just started, so we're getting back into the grind of spring semester. I know anxiety can be a big, big component for like 8 years and older. And I hope that answers her question. So it depends. I would love to chat with her and have a little bit more conversation about what's going on with her. First, I would address constipation with the bowel massage, the positioning, the water intake, the
Hydration.
activity level. I would address avoiding schedules, so asking them, how many times did you go to the bathroom? They should be peeing every 2 to 3 hours. So if they're not being allowed to go, so middle school, they're not allowed to go, that can be a component. Then making sure, so we put them on voiding schedules. We make them pee at certain intervals. I write a note to the school and tell them we're working through things. So if they're bedwetting, usually they're not peeing enough throughout the day. One other component I want to mention too is if parents are providing melatonin with a multivitamin, but any sort of like chewable melatonin to help them go to sleep at night, that can be really helpful to get them to fall asleep. Some people use it as a very regular morning or evening routine. The problem with supplementing melatonin is then it doesn't allow our bodies to make the appropriate amount of melatonin. So when you increase melatonin, which is at night, then your body naturally produces the anti-diuretic hormone, which tells your kidneys to not work as hard and to kind of suppress themselves so you're not producing as much urine overnight. If there's a lot of other factors that go into like evening routines, but melatonin is a big one that I will find that my parents are providing to help them sleep. Now, I dive a little bit more into their sleep schedule or their evening schedule. Why are they needing the melatonin? Is it because it makes it easier to fall asleep? Let's find alternatives. Melatonin every now and then is fine, but regularly it's going to decrease the natural production of melatonin and anti-diuretic hormone. Then they're going to be bedwetters for sure.
Mm-hmm. Something else, just as we, I guess, kind of wrap up, kids at school or just kids in general, when they're out at public, we need to make sure they're not hovering. You know, there's a fear of sitting on public toilets, and if somebody is hovering, kids or adults, they are not fully relaxing their pelvic floor, and they will not be able to empty their bladder completely, and that can just lead to a whole cascade of all these symptoms we've been discussing. So nobody needs to be hovering when they
or poop,
urinate
especially
or
poop.
defecate.
But put toilet paper down. Put toilet paper down.
Yes.
Have them sit down. I make my daughter. She's 4. I make her sit on the toilet, and I actually stand in front of her, and she holds my leg. That way, she doesn't have to hold herself up on the toilet, because holding herself up on the toilet puts you straight up and down. So I stand in front of her. That way, she can lean forward, and she doesn't have to touch the potty. She's holding on to me. Now, they can't do that in school, but if you're out and about shopping, that can be really helpful, especially the younger kids. Which I could talk about this topic for like hours, so I have to be careful.
Okay. But if a child is still having problems after the parents feel that all the things have been addressed that we've talked about, you and I both see kids. We see pediatric pelvic floor dysfunction. We treat it. Now with adults, most people are aware. Yes, we do internal exams, but just let you know, we do those with kids. We steer clear of that. It does not involve anything of that sort. But normally it's Amanda discussed the bladder diaries and evaluation of schedules. But it's also kind of teaching relaxation techniques. These kids may have a lot of tension in their abdominal region, in their glutes. It may be a postural component. But there are things that we can do as pelvic health PTs to help these kids. So if it's an ongoing problem, I would encourage you moms or dads to find a pelvic floor specialist for your child.
100% agree, for sure. Even just one good conversation about your specific issues can make a world of difference in both your child's life and your life, and hopefully decrease the battle.
Yep. Well, I think we talked about a lot. Amanda, can you think of
No, I
anything?
think we're good. I think we hit a lot. Hopefully, if people watch this, people can ask questions, and we can reconvene at another point. If there's anything we mentioned that applies to you or your adults or kids, then we can reconvene another time. Or any of our, pelvic health therapists that are on here. Any tips or tricks of anything else, we can all collaborate together and just impact the world is the goal.
Yes, or any of your moms, if you have specific questions, feel free to message Amanda or I, and we can try to help you that way if it's something we can answer easily. So, but I enjoyed this, Amanda. Yeah, hopefully we can again, and if not, talk about pediatric pelvic floor, talk about something else
Sounds good.
pelvic health related.
Well,
But yeah,
thank you so much, and hopefully we get just a really good impact on this. And I appreciate your time during your lunch break. Thank
you
you.
too, Amanda.
We'll be in touch. See ya.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, there she is. Yay. Hey, Amanda.
Okay.